If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Sophie Barrington at Archer Creative are the experts in equine marketing, and Sophie understands how to achieve success in the horse industry, providing innovative and outcome-driven marketing services that result in a dramatic difference to your bottom line. Go to horsechats.com, search for Sophie, search for Barrington, or search for Archer Creative, and her details are at the bottom of the page. Now, today we've got a guest all the way from the UK, Ben Hart. How are you today, Ben?
I'm really good, thank you. Really good.
Yeah, very good. Ben, just sort of having a look through and looking at your website and a few other things, you find out a lot about people online, I think, these days. I just want to read something that is off your website, and I think it sort of explains you and also a reason why we're happy to support what you're doing. So this is it here. It's Ben Hart hates injustice and wasted potential. He has a mission to help people understand the true nature of equines by using the honesty of the science of behaviour to help both animals and their people unlock their true potential. He firmly believes with equines it doesn't have to be complicated, dangerous or stressful. And by helping people to understand the true and amazing power of equines, he wants them to better understand each other, to make life better for horses, donkeys and mules. Ben removes the myths and dependence on dominance and forceful training methods and focuses on positive, safe, effective solutions that centre on both the animal and the human. Ben's delivery of training is unique, ensuring, and an outstanding experience that's enjoying and life-changing. And I think these values, we're very happy to support. So I'm pretty delighted to talk to you today, Ben.
That's fantastic. It's really interesting to hear that read back to me, because I was thinking when you said there that online and you can find out about people, I've been doing this for 20 years and I guess over 20 years there's a lot of online stuff you can read and find out about. And I hope that the evidence of everything I put online over 20 years probably supports that. And actually, as you read that, I'm thinking, yeah, that's exactly what I try and do. And it's some of the principles that I still stick to and that I've been working for all of that time.
Good. Now, Ben, we're going to ask you, and I didn't actually warn you before we started, a favourite quote. Have you got a favourite quote, something that you'd like to chat about?
I guess I love quotes, and everything we do, is in line with that thing about behaviour. And so things change all the time. So I'm a real person. There's a thing about me, if we go out for dinner, everybody knows I'll be the last one to order because it's kind of a mood thing and I have to figure out what I feel like at the moment. I'm not a great sort of, I always have this at a restaurant. And I'm the same with my quotes, but picking one up would be probably the one that says, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Yes, okay.
And I think that has a lot of application for me for horsemanship and working with equines. And that's why in what you've read there from the website is so much about also people. I started out like most people, want to work with horses, donkeys, mules. And pretty soon I figured out that I better learn how to work with people, because actually it's such an important combination. And it's great to have a method and be able to work with a horse, but actually it's so important to work with people, and how people see the world determines how they interact with their equine and the world around them. And understanding that becomes sort of core essence of what we do.
Yeah. And is this, just taking on that, is this where we start talking about, and I know it's not, can't be divided evenly, just optimists and pessimists, but, optimists generally have a better life than pessimists. Pessimists, there's always something going wrong with them. And they might see the same opportunity, or an optimist will see an opportunity, but a pessimist will just see things going wrong. Is it a little bit like that?
Well, it is a little bit like that. And the great thing about the science of behaviour, what we start to do, and we talk about this on courses, is that there's something called the reticular activating system, which is a neural network at the back of all our brains.
Yep.
And that programs what we look for, or we program it to look for stuff. So there's a great experiment they do that says, okay, they ask people whether they are a lucky person. You know, are you naturally lucky? You know, not lucky to be alive, but, you know, do you find that $20? Are you the person that's got the parking space most of the time? And then they give them a newspaper and they say, okay, let's count the number of adverts in the newspaper and come back and tell me when you counted them. Now, the people who don't rate themselves as lucky will generally take 3 or 4 times as long to do this for a start, and they'll count through all the adverts and they'll go 46 adverts. That's great, well done. The people who think that they're lucky generally will see in the first couple of adverts a sign that says, you know, stop counting, there's 46 adverts in this newspaper. And they go, oh, that's lucky, there's 46 adverts. And they go, yes, there is. And they also look in there and then they'll see an advert that says, you know, if you see this advert, take it to the examiner, you'll get $20. And they go, oh, really? Is this true? And they go, yeah, it is. Here's $20. And they go, wow, I'm so lucky. And so absolutely, you program your brain, we program our brain to see those opportunities. And it's the same when you work with horses. You know, do you see that horse that has a difficulty as an opportunity to learn, or do you see it as a horse that's being difficult? Mm-hmm. Do you see that animal that's struggling to get something as an opportunity to build a relationship, or do you see it as a difficulty to overcome that isn't a problem?
I'm just loving talking to you straight away. You know, I just think that we haven't even talked about methods of training horses or anything like that yet, but just the way that you go about approaching it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Have you always had this way of working with horses, or do you think that, you know, you've learned something along the line where you might have worked with a trainer or worked with someone, or is this just, you know, tell us how you started, not necessarily with horses, but with the training methods that you use and the philosophy that you use?
Wow, that is oh my gosh, how long we got? I was lucky enough to, I guess it goes all the way back to childhood. I was lucky enough to grow up with a father who was a policeman, but he thought he should have been the sheriff in America 100 years before he was a policeman in England. And subsequently, we grew up with heavy horses and Percherons and ploughing and looking after a small holding with horses. So I was kind of around it for a long time when I was young, and that's probably a major influence for me. But it wasn't a deliberate. I sort of had a lot of interest in human success and learning, and went on a bit of a journey for about 10, 15 years through learning, and then got into horses properly. I had no clue what I was doing, and it's been a 20-year journey of figuring stuff out. And I started off with a method trainer, and I had an opportunity, and I'm always grateful for that. But pretty quickly I met a horse, and this was a changing point in my life, was I met a horse that when I applied the method of the trainer that I was working for at the time, this horse just went, that doesn't work. And he, you know, it was about tapping the horse on the coronet band when the horse bit you and stuff like that. And I was, you know, kind of trying to figure stuff out. So I went in and just gently tapped the horse on the coronet band when he bit me, and it was supposed to disrupt the flow of information and be mildly negative. Did this a couple of times. I thought, yeah, I'm a horse trainer, you know. And then the third time, the fourth time, I probably thought I was a horse whisperer or something crazy like that. And the fifth time, this horse just looked me in the eye, bent down and bit my foot. And that for me just changed my life, because I'm like, oh no, I better have 10 different answers to one problem here. And that's why I started studying the science of behavior and started looking at that practical application of the science. So what I've then done for the next 20 years is to steal the work of brilliant scientists and knowledgeable people who do the research and go, well, how does a rat pressing a lever in a science lab relate to somebody who's going to have to go into a stable with a horse that wants to bite them? And how does what we know about human learning practically apply? And so it's been a constant journey, and is a constant journey of learning and getting lighter and figuring things out and applying lots of different approaches to different situations. I'm very much that, for me, it's not about what I can do, it's about what you can do as a horse owner or trainer, but also about the difficulty that everybody's unique, their horse is unique, the environment's unique. So how can I say, this is what you've got to do? What I go to do is to say, okay, who are you? What do you want to achieve? Where does that come from? What is your horse's potential? Where do you want to go with this? What difficulties do you have? And we blend that together to find an answer that's right for that owner. And I think that is really, it's a harder route. For me, it's a harder route for people that I work with, because we like an ABC, we like that process of being like, just do this and everything will work. But what I find is that we want to come back to another quote, which is that thing about if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, and if you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And so for me, it's about giving people those skills to question and the confidence and that they can do it forever, that they don't need me. It's a terrible business for me to be in financially because I always put myself out of business. You create the courage and the strength and the knowledge in somebody that you're working with. They don't need you anymore, and that's how it should be. I don't want that independence. Dependence on me. I want them to be able to develop those skills and go, thank you very much, and I'm off and I'm having a great time with my horse.
I'm just thinking, it's almost like when you think of a training method, you just think, oh, yeah, sure. It's to really simplify it, right? And I know it's a lot more complicated than that, but you think of the German training scale and it's just 6 steps and you've got a Grand Prix horse, right? Easy. But you start to ask questions like, where are you? What do you want to achieve? Let's have a look at your horse. What problems? It's almost like a maze. It's almost like you're all over the place, but you've got to learn all these little, well, if this happens, then you've got to do that. And if that happens, then you've got to do that. So, just the pictures that are sort of going through my mind as you're talking about it and learning about, I suppose, not what to do, but why, how to do it and why and really thinking and questioning. Yeah.
Totally. It is absolutely that. And that is uncomfortable for people because I think we've come from horsemanship of the last 150 years is what do you do to your horse? And I would change that to what are we doing with our horse and working with, is that right for this horse? Is it just an environmental issue? We don't need to do training. We just need to give him more environment enrichment or more turnout. If we want to get a solution to an issue, if we want to do training, are we the person that we need to work on ourselves first before we begin to do that? And I think so often training takes a lot longer than it needs to, not because of our methods, but because we're inefficient. We're working on the wrong things because we haven't stepped far enough back to start with to go, okay, my horse doesn't load in the trailer, so I want to go to the trailer to fix it. And I'm like, the reason your horse doesn't want to load in the trailer is because he lacks confidence or he lacks problem-solving skills. And so let's take it back and let's work on our problem-solving, trust and confidence, build that relationship, and lo and behold, going in the trailer becomes so easy. Now, we still got to work on that and we've got to understand the science behind it, but we often work in the wrong places. So, yeah, definitely. But it becomes a more fulfilling relationship because we actually understand our horse or donkey or our mule better. And I'm not a great one for doing the work for people. I really like people to do their own work. So, you can send your horse away to be started, but to my mind, actually, what I like to see is I think most people, if they take a long enough view of it and say, I'm going to take a year to start my horse and ride, and I get the training plans in place, most people can start their own horse. Okay, if I get it, if you've got some, you're 80 years old, getting on a green horse for the first time might be a little bit daunting, and you might want to get someone younger who can bounce a bit more. But there isn't the need to do that because you've done all the training. People will tell me that they've got on their horse and they've had an accident, and when you trace that back, that person knew there was going to be an accident because they were nervous about getting on. And I'm like, well, if you're nervous about getting on, what that nervousness is telling you is you haven't done enough work to predict the behavior of this animal, so don't get on him. It's as simple as that. Do the work, do the preparation, build that animal's ability to so that you're not thinking, oh my gosh, what happens if? We take too many risks with horses. We push them too quick. We get themselves into situations we've not prepared them to get out of. And then we have accidents, and then we scare ourselves or we scare the horse, and then we have to fix it. And we need to take a longer-term view of it, and we need to enjoy that relationship and build it up over time.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit preachy. That sounds a bit preachy. I don't mean to say I can, but it's one thing I see a lot of. Is that we stop enjoying that relationship. We just want to get to the answer.
But you're talking about, even as a young horse, like a lot of experienced competitive coaches come on and say we're bringing on, where people are just in too much of a rush to get there. But even at that basic stage and saying something like, well, if you're too nervous to get on, you're not ready. You can break it down into smaller steps and do the steps that you're confident with as well as the horse's confidence.
Absolutely. I'm a real big fan of what scientifically we call successive approximation or shaping, which is breaking something down into lots of small steps. Now, again, through 20 years of experience of doing this, everybody knows they've got to break it down into small steps. My experience tells me that people just don't break it down into small enough steps. So And once you learn how small the steps are, anybody can do them. And we can take the pressure off ourselves to be able to do the big thing and just go, it's okay if just I've got a horse that I'm nervous of picking his feet up, just stroking him on the rump until I'm not nervous might be the step for today, and that's fine. We'll come back tomorrow and do something. But there's a lot of experts in the horse world, and I mean that in a way of, people will tell you what you should be doing with your horse. Why aren't you doing this? You just need to show him who's boss. You need to do X, Y, and Z. You should have done this when he's taking the mickey. And when you look at the science behavior, people just are so far off the mark with horses and their true nature that actually that horse is I put a post on Facebook the other day, which sounded really popular. Your horse isn't giving you a hard time; he's having a hard time. And coming at it from that angle starts to change what we do with them, really.
Yeah. Thinking, because you often go back to, science of behaviour and that whole science-based approach, and I think we've talked about learning theory and shaping.
Yeah.
Is there, and I know that science, has really, really evolved over, I don't know, it's almost exponential. You sort of go back 20 years and we've got a guy here, Andrew McLean, and people thought he was crazy 20 years ago. It's like, and now, obviously people realise that 20 years ago what he talks about is quite relevant to the horse industry. But do you think that there's gaps now where we could be going and could be doing a bit more research into the horse? It's not just the horse behaviour, it's the combination of horses and people. Do you think there's an area there that needs exploring a bit more?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the research that's done is very functional. And I think actually the problem with all horse research, to my mind, is twofold. One is it doesn't often look at that horse's previous experience. So if you've got a horse that's done lots of, say, positive reinforcement, lots of training, been taught how to solve problems, doesn't fear making mistakes, and you test that horse for intelligence, you're going to have a really smart horse. You have a horse that comes from an environment where it's been maybe told off more punishment, negative reinforcement based, it's probably not going to appear quite as intelligent. So when we start to look at how smart a horse is and what can we learn, the problem is, what are the horses that we're testing? And secondly, we then look at the science of behavior, and people start to do science on methods and how a horse learns and stuff. What I don't see is how good was the practitioner that was doing the work with the horse that was then observed to go, this is how horses learn. Because I think that for me, that's an area of science we need to look at and go, well, actually, if we had a really good practitioner who's using the science of behavior and his timing was spot on and we had all that shaping in the right place, what would it look like compared to maybe somebody else that we see? And so for me, those are the areas I'd like to see us explore a lot more in the science of behavior.
So looking at horses that have got previous history and then getting practitioners to work more with the scientists.
Yeah. I mean, there's some interesting studies where you kind of go, okay, that's really interesting, but trick the horse 17 times to learn something, for instance. But then you question, but how good was the trainer that was teaching that particular method or doing something? And, taking that out of the equation, because, otherwise you just end up with very blank situations where the horse learned to press a button, and that gives us an insight into some of horse behavior, obviously. But it's that interaction between the quality of the person and the training, as opposed to just the horse's ability to learn to press a button and get a reward. I mean, if we look at that, there's some great experiments that show that fat horses are not as smart as thin ones, because they give up earlier. But it's like they don't need the food as much, so they're not motivated as much, so they give up the training and appear not to be as smart. But thinner horses are hungrier and therefore work longer and solve more problems and are smarter. And we all know that's kind of a crazy situation to look at science. So I think we need to clean all that up. That would be a great area to explore.
Okay. What about people that have helped you along that whole science-based approach? Is there anyone in particular that you'd like to talk about that you've sort of either helped with the research or the research has really hit home with you?
There are a lot. I'm a real learning mindset person, and I really think that everybody that I've worked with, I try and learn from. Every horse, there are obviously standouts and things like that. I mean, early on in my career, I got to work with a gentleman called Crawford Hall, who had a tragic horse accident and was actually in a wheelchair. And I've always respected him because he had to train people and work with them, and he couldn't get out of his chair to take the horse off you and show you what to do. So everything had to come from being able to sit back and look at people and ask questions and talk, and what about this and what about that. And I think I often catch myself when I'm training with people and just having to apologize and say, look, I'm not good enough at that stage yet to be able to do this without actually getting a feel and putting my hands on the horse and actually just doing a little bit to go, okay, this is what it feels like and I can understand it. And he had to do all of that without that ability to take the horse from you and do that. And I think that's always been inspirational to me. But there've been lots of people that have caused me to learn. I don't really have a trainer or someone that I followed. I started out with it, but that was 20 years ago. And ever since, I've kind of found my own path and worked with lots of really good people that are just trying to figure it out, really. And the horses are the best teachers. The donkeys, the mules, they are always the best teachers. And I think that's where I've really learned. I've been lucky enough to work with equines. And I will say this freely, at the start of my career, I got horses. It took me 10 months to put a head collar on a Mustang. And, when you've had that, it's like patience is not a problem because that Mustang taught me that for 10 months. So I was lucky to get those sort of horses early in my career. And I see a lot of people who maybe don't get that sort of horse until a lot later in their career. So those are the big trainers. It's actually horses and donkeys and mules that I'd name and go, yeah, they're the beings that have really changed my thinking and my learning.
Yeah. Do you think, just looking about your career, the last 20 years, has there been a moment where you think this is a really big moment for me, that I feel like I've just, jumped ahead, progressed, or done something that you're really proud of? Is that one moment, or do you think it's just been progressive over the last 20 years?
That's a good question. No, I think it's probably been progressive. There is one moment where, I don't have a method, although I'll use clicker training, and I've got a book on clicker training, and I've got various tools, and I'm big on positive reinforcement, but we'll advocate other ways of working with horses. But watching your horse and looking at how they were working with clicker training, and watching the trainer who became my wife doing something completely different, and me going, wow, how does that work? I thought I knew what I was talking about, and now I'm watching this, and actually they started this whole chain, which led to me to do clicker training in a different way from the typical one click, one reward. And I think that kind of is a point maybe that I'm quite proud about, because it was different at the time. And that looking back, I took a lot of flack for doing it differently, and was told that it would never work. And actually, I was lying to the horse, and I'm like, I'm just doing what the horse is already doing and telling me. And finally wrote a book about it when I figured I had enough knowledge. And then now I'm looking around and I'm seeing people going, oh yeah, that kind of works. Yeah. People do that. People advocate that. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, oh, okay. I spent, 10 years thinking I was taking a bit of a hit for that, but looking around, I'm not as crazy as I thought I was. So I guess that's kind of a nice feeling that I wasn't too far off the mark, and was smart enough to learn from those people and my wife what they were doing.
I was going to say your biggest challenge, but that's probably it, is people you're teaching that may not be just out of the straight norm. You're really exploring a lot of, I suppose, outside the box. Do you take a lot of flack for that? Do people come to you and they say, what you're doing is wrong and you should be doing it this way? Do you take a lot of flack, or maybe not so much now?
Do I take a lot of flack? That's a good question. I'm not aware. Nobody directly. I think that the answer is, I don't condemn anybody. I try not to judge. It's one of my principles. People are all on a journey. And one of the things that really annoys me about the horse industry and horse professionals is people get on a journey themselves, and then they start criticizing other people who are on a different journey and further back, forgetting that they themselves were probably there 5 years ago.
Yep.
And so I'm really keen that, if you want to use a method, if you want to use a whip, that's up to you. Use it correctly. It's not my job to tell you whether you should or shouldn't use a whip, but it is my job to explain what the outcomes of that might be, and the options, and you can make your choice. It's your horse. You make those decisions. And I think that's meant that I haven't directly ever sort of force things down people's throats. I said, you have to do it this way, or you must do it. It's always been kind of, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. this is what I'm trying to figure out for the horses. I try and be as ethical as possible. You can, I'll stand by that. You can stop me as a trainer, as an owner of a horse. I will always say, like, if you're not comfortable with anything that's going on, then tell me. And that hasn't happened. So I think that those principles which are on my website have kept me from being too controversial in people's faces, and I think that's avoided a lot of flack, maybe. But I think the whole positive reinforcement, when I started 20 years ago, maybe people were a little bit like, horses, what are they, and so, but not in a real personal way, just kind of, there's a crazy guy who's scratching horses and thinks that they can learn. So not so much now, maybe, but in the past, But I think everybody goes through that in the horse world,
Sure.
as you learn. Like you said, Andrew, 20 years ago, doing science stuff, people are going, what's he talking about? And now they're like, well, yeah, of course. But that's the theory of change, isn't it? First, change is vigorously, attacked, and then it's kind of eventually accepted as normal. Yeah, we've always done it that way.
Just thinking, when you first go to teach a new group where you're doing a clinic, or you've got a group of riders, what's a common problem that you see with those riders or handlers? Maybe not even riding, maybe handling. Just a common problem that you almost got to step in there and say, right, well, we'll just start off and I'm going to lay down a few ground rules, but let's start off with a bit of a discussion on this particular subject. Is there something that you commonly see when you first see someone that you haven't taught before or had anything to do with before?
There are probably two things. What I've been working on recently is simplifying the whole process of the science of behaviour, because it's such a massive area, and I think there's so much for people to concentrate and look on, and there's so many people telling you what you should or shouldn't do. There are kind of 6 things that I say, through experience tells me that they're probably not going to be in the right place, and that's understanding the true nature of the horse. So, people come at horses and don't understand how the true nature of the horse is from the science, and that's about where your dominance comes from, and people saying, oh, he's been trying to be dominant, and we know scientifically horses aren't trying to be dominant, and so adjusting people's understanding of what the horse is truly capable of, what they're doing, what motivates their behaviour. And then we go through a process of understanding the operant condition, positive, negative punishment, of understanding shaping, which is a key area that most people probably struggle with to get the steps small enough, stretching the comfort zones, deliberately building problem-solving trust and confidence, and enjoying the journey. If you focus on those 6 things, then that probably accounts for that 80-20 rule, where those 6 things produce an 80% improvement in everything else. And so that leads me to say the 2 things that I generally see that I have to work on first is people's intuition. Most people actually tend to know what the right thing is for their horse, but they're often afraid to do it, especially just your average owner that's trying to do the right thing, that's trying to learn. They kind of know, but we have to, my job is often to give them the confidence to go, okay, well, if that's what you feel, let's do that. You know your horse better than anybody else. So building that confidence for people to just begin to listen to their intuition and to build their understanding alongside improving the timing. Timing is the physical thing that is our communication. When we release pressure, when we give the scratch, when we interact with the horse. And often we don't pay enough attention to that tiny detail. As humans, we get away with it because we've got words and we can watch body language. Often as in the horse-human relationship, we're not paying enough attention to when do we just put a hand on that horse? When do we, classic example, the horse that maybe nibbles a bit or pushes into us, people put their hand on the head and push it away. And you're like, you are aware that actually what you're just doing is rewarding that behavior. Well, no, I'm telling him off. It's like, no, you're not. In the horse's view, your timing is now wrong. And because you put your hand on him, he wanted attention. You've just given it to him. It was bad attention. That's why he's keeping doing the behavior. So adjusting that bit of timing is often the starting point. Timing, improve people's trust of themselves and their intuition. Then we can get started into everything else.
Mm-hmm. And what are you looking forward to now? Just tell us, what's the next 20 years going to be like?
Oh, blimey. Yeah, I've been asked that before, and I'm like, I have no idea.
I should have said the next year or two, shouldn't I?
yeah. Next week is far enough for me. No, so I've changed a little bit of how I work for 2 reasons. One, I have a young family with I have a son who's 5 yesterday, and so I actually try not to travel as much because I can't get that time back away from my family. So for the time being, I do travel a bit. I do some workshops, and I'd like in the future to be able to travel and take them with me, which would be a great experience. So that's something that I hope is going to happen. But that's led me into noticing, and you're a great example of this, how does a little trainer that's trying to have that mission that you talked about at the start help people in Australia? Because you're not going to come all the way from Australia to do a clinic with me for a day or for a couple of days or stuff like that. So a lot of my work is now has focused much more on the sort of online side, being able to reach out. And one of those things is being able to make stuff available to people all over the world, whether that's my shaping plans or training. And I'm going to be creating and opening up a sort of a membership site where I can actually support people through this whole journey, create a community that people can engage in and that we can take them through that, whether you're in Australia or America or New Zealand or wherever it might be. So trying to reach out globally to help people who've got similar ideas and want that support, but are isolated either because there's so many traditional yards and liveries where I hear from people like, I'm just one person and I'm trying to do it differently, but everybody's telling me I'm crazy. And I'd like to support those people. And I think technology can let us do that now. So that's where the next few years are going for me. I've got a couple of books that I'm writing at the moment. So those are coming out and we're going to work on those.
Certainly tell us and keep us updated about those books as well, because I'd like to talk to you about them. That'd be good. Yeah,
definitely. I want to write a different book. There's so many good horse books. There's so many good, science behavior books. This is the first one is a little bit more about encouraging and helping people. It's more of a self-help book for horse owners, that are struggling to find their own path and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Ben, how would you, if you're just going to do it in a sentence or two, just summarise your philosophy with horses, into a message before we go?
Yeah, that's another tricky one. And people often say, Ben, the problem with you is we don't know what you do. It's really easy if you have a trainer that has a method, you can look at that on YouTube and you can go, yeah, I want that. But for me, it's really about helping people find their own path to horsemanship. I guess that bit you read out at the start is what I kind of do. And then it's saying, where you are, I want to build your confidence, your knowledge and skills so that you can have your relationship with your horse or donkey or mule, and I can affect that and help you for the next 20 years so that you don't have to feel insecure or nervous or lack confidence or worry you're doing the wrong thing. So I guess that's really my philosophy, is helping people to find their own path to horsemanship.
Okay. Now, if people would like to contact you, what's the best way?
I always encourage people to have a little look at the website, and to hartshorsemanship.com. Check that I'm the trainer for them. My principles are on there, what I do, all of that sort of stuff. You can obviously go to Facebook and have a look and find me on there and do those sorts of things. And just send me an email if that's what you say. You can see there's lots of, I was doing some stuff the other day and realised how many free resources. There's free ebooks and there's videos on YouTube and all sorts of stuff. So there's plenty for people to explore. I'm not a real commercial guy that, you got to buy this $180 fairy wand to be able to do something with your horse. It really is about you being able to improve it. So you just dig around and have a little look and that sort of thing.
Perfect. And all those details will be at the bottom of your page, which will be on horsechats.com/Ben Hart. Or just go and search Ben and you'll find him. Ben, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing your philosophy. All I can do is say I fully support it. And I think I'd love to get you back on again, and hopefully that'll be sometime soon.
Yeah, we can do that. It's a real pleasure because, again, I'm just learning from you. You asking questions is a great way for me to go, wow, how do I get that across better, and how do I figure that out? So I'm really happy to talk if it helps people.
Great. Okay, look forward to it then. Talk to you soon.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Thank you very much indeed. Go well.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.